Hi there. Welcome back to Wander Fixed. Every week we get together, hang out, try to learn something new. Today, Nate has prepared a presentation on Yasuke.
What do you guys know about Yasuke?
I know that he is the Black Samurai, um, and that's about it. I know that we don't have any actual confirmation that he was black, but there's a lot of historical evidence that points to him being of African descent.
Yeah, I actually played Assassin's Creed Shadows, and he's one of the main characters in that. I didn't beat it. I only got about halfway through it, but I'm pretty sure it took some liberties. But he was an interesting character in that at least. I haven't been a huge fan of some of the new Assassin's Creed games. I've played all of them, but I thought it was okay and it was fun. So I'd love to learn more about the real history of him.
We're going to start here. I'll just talk about notable sources. These are, for the most part, primary sources. The first one being the Chronicles of Lord Nobunaga, who is the military. So, to break down, this Yasuke shows up in Japan in what is known as the Sengoku Jidai, or the Warring States period of Japan. How Japan is structured is there's the emperor, there's the shogun, who is the military leader and the true power behind the throne, and under the shogun are a bunch of daimyos who are always fighting each other. Oda Nobunaga is one of these daimyos who is one of the first of three great unifiers that end the Sengoku Jidai.
Nobunaga, I
Um,
think, is actually in Shadows, so they use that, bit of lore.
yeah, awesome. So the Chronicles of Lord Oda Nobunaga are written by Ota Gyuchi. I tried to read as much of this as I could, but the book itself is $200. So I found a Google books where you can read most of it, but sadly the chapters about Yasuke are removed. The parts with him in it are not available in the preview. You have to actually buy the book to get that part. So I found other videos and sources where people had been able to read it and told me what it said.
Nice.
Uh, the other thing is we have the Jesuit monks. The Jesuits were the only Christian missionary group allowed in Japan. They actually had a special permission from the Pope to be the only people there because they believed that the culture of Japan was very delicate. There was a lot of rituals, traditions, and other things they didn't think other missionary groups would be able to properly understand, and it would mess up the Christian mission in Japan, which kind of ends up being true. Um, so we have records of those, which are letters from these Jesuit missionaries by Father Jean Crasset and Louis Fros. I'm going to butcher these pronunciations. And Alessandro Valligiano, who is the Jesuit priest who actually is Yasuke's master. And then we have the letters of Matsudira Yatada, who is one of the other samurai during the time of Oda Nobunaga, and he has some letters where he mentions Yasuke.
So you're saying that all of these are things that specifically mention Yasuke, meaning that most likely he was real, like, right? That's pretty confirmed that Yasuke was a real samurai.
So Yasuke was real. Whether or not he was a samurai is what's really up for debate.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
But a lot of people interacted with him and are like, hey, this is guy has done a lot of cool stuff. We just don't know if we would classify him as like samurai.
so how much he's done is also up for debate. So this is where we get into Thomas Lockley and Jeffrey Gerard. They wrote a book called African Samurai about Yasuke. They took the letters and notes, which I would say probably comprise maybe about 10 pages worth of content about Yasuke, and wrote a 400-page book about him, which embellishes a bit of the historical record and creates more what is a historical fiction. It has the actual history, but they embellish it with more of a novel type storytelling to
Yeah,
make
because
him
that was in
into a great figure.
2019, so they didn't live through it. They were just
Yeah.
kind of picking
Yeah, they
some
didn't.
things and then expanding upon it, it sounds like.
Yeah, and they are notable like professors and academics, like people who study Japanese history and language. So it's not like it's completely out of nowhere that they're the ones who wrote this.
Sure.
It's just it seems they kind of embellish things. So what we'll start with, and comes a bit from African Samurai, we have we know that he is from Africa. He's either from North Africa or Mozambique are the two places they believe he is most likely to be from.
Do they have a
In one of
reasoning
the
for that,
letter,
or do you know at all why they think those two
so th-
places?
yeah, so it has to do with the Portuguese slave trade
Oh,
and their
yes.
trade
Okay.
with Japan, and as well as the Muslim slave trade, like the Islam Caliphate slave trade that was going on.
Yeah.
So
Um,
Yasuke started out as a slave.
yes, he
Okay.
started as a slave. Um, in the letters from Matsudaira Idiatata, I am so sorry I'm pronouncing all of these horribly wrong. Um, they say that Yasuke is 6.2 shaku tall, which roughly translates to he's 6'2". So he is six
Interesting.
foot two.
So in Assassin's Creed Shadows, it's the same kind of thing. He goes to like Lord Nobunaga and he starts off as a Portuguese slave. He's traded to them. And it's very interesting. I like how they didn't quite shy away from the Japanese people at the time, first time seeing a black person, because they're all kind of like, what is wrong with you? Um, and it's very interesting to kind of see that first time experience, but also they ended up really liking him for the fact of how big he is in the game. In the game,
Mhm.
I think he's even bigger than 6'2". He's massive. And he ends up being the super tough guy, so they make him a samurai and stuff, but obviously that's probably some embellishment there.
So one of the reasons we think he might have come from southern Sudan is because of the Dinka people. They are the world record holders for being the tallest people on Earth. Like one thing to note is the average height of like a Japanese person during the time period of the Sengoku Jidai was like somewhere between 5'1" to like 5'3".
Sure. So I guess seeing a 6'2" person would be pretty life changing. A 6'2" black
Yeah.
person for that would be pretty shocking. If you had never seen either of those before.
Yeah.
It could very
Another
easily become a myth and a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah, another thing to note is we believe he was probably taken in if he was from the Dinka people, which we don't know for sure. That's just one of the pervasive theories, is we believe he was. One thing you know in the picture here, we show one of them. They do ritualistic scarification on their bodies as a rite of passage into adulthood, typically on their face. Yasuke is never mentioned to have this type of scarification done on him, so he must have been taken before he was an adult. But according to the letters and stuff we find, they believe Yasuke during the time of his service to Oda Nobunaga was probably somewhere between 25 to 28.
So it sounds like there's more evidence leading towards him being from Mozambique in southern Africa as opposed to the Dinka people in Sudan.
People believe the Dinka people. The reason people believe Mozambique is just because of like the trade routes that the Portuguese would go around, is kind of what I
Yeah.
gathered.
Going down because it wouldn't
But
make sense for the Portuguese to go down and back up to Sudan,
Yeah.
right? They would come down and go to Mozambique and then to Japan, I'm assuming.
most likely there is like this. I don't know if I don't think the Suez Canal is a thing at this time. So yeah, they have to go around the Horn of Africa. But we do know that he kind of shows up more when um, Alessandro Valaginano picks him up, probably in India, is where he first has Yasuke be a servant, which is why people think the Dinka people, because he served as a bodyguard. That was his role. He was a bodyguard.
Yeah.
And the Mughal Empire and other like Muslim caliphates and stuff had Habish, which were African slave soldiers and mercenaries. And it seems likely, since the Dinka were a warrior people, that he probably got enslaved, brought into service under these Habshi, and then from there was sold to the Jesuits as a bodyguard, is what seems to be the most likely theory.
Okay.
Uh,
So he's lived almost his entire life as like a fighter soldier type person.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like
yeah,
they kept being like, and this is kind of how it happens in the video game too. So they did obviously do the research. Is they just keep being like, "Holy crap, that guy's huge. We want
Yeah.
him," and they
I,
just
I
keep
mean,
selling
yeah,
him
if
and then taking him as a bodyguard slash slave kind of thing.
yeah, if you're living in, feudal Japan, a 6'2" black guy is gonna be intimidating just off the bat. So I definitely understand why they opted for that.
Yeah.
yeah, and so he would have been trained in some sort of martial skills. Um, he probably would have been forced to convert to Islam because the Dinka people have their own religion. And then when he became a Jesuit slave, he was probably forced to convert to Christianity. But the Jesuits were much stricter in what they would accept for conversion. So he actually probably had to like learn a lot about Catholicism and the scriptures and Jesus and everything before they would accept him being a convert. So He was probably somewhat educated, and this is where one thing we don't know for sure. We don't know how well he actually spoke Japanese, if at all. But since the Jesuits were taking him to Japan to serve as missionaries in Japan and he was their bodyguard, it's likely he spoke some level of Japanese.
Yeah.
So
I
he's
think
not
in
a
the game, and I played it again, and I keep relating it to it because this is my only
yeah,
connection to him. But I love to talk about whether the game is true or not. I know Assassin's Creed does a lot of their research, and a lot of their stuff is like slightly historically true, but with their own twists on it, and then they add like
yeah.
mythical creatures on top of that. But I believe he speaks Portuguese at the beginning. I don't know if he speaks Japanese, and I only say that because I'm not positive because the whole game was in English, and so it's not very clear. But I also played it about a year ago, so I'm not positive on that aspect either. But I believe he does speak Portuguese at least.
Yeah, so he would most likely speak Portuguese because he served the Jesuits. Now, one thing to note with Oda Nobunaga, Oda Nobunaga did give the Jesuits land for them to have as like a trading port, and he gave them a church and everything. Like he was a fan of Western society and things that he found to be exotic. And he's one of the early adopters of gunpowders and like arquebuses, which are like muskets to be used in warfare. Um, so we know the first meeting is in Miyako in 1581. Him and his son or grandson are traveling, and they see Yasuke, and they don't believe that his skin is actually black. They think it's painted, so they force people to bathe him to try to see if it's real or not.
That happens in the game.
Yeah, so pretty accurate. Allegedly, like basically, his presence was so cool that it kind of caused a stampede of people like breaking stuff down to like try to see him, like destroying fences and like climbing buildings and stuff because he was very exotic in Japan. He was something unseen. Um, so
Were Oda Nobunaga's hands that small?
possibly this is a I believe it's a Japanese woodblock print of Oda Nobunaga. Um,
Yes.
and so looking through the letters, what we know from the primary sources of the time period is Oda Nobunaga takes him into his service. He seems to like him. He gives him a small sword, a residence, and um and Matsudaira Itada comments at some point later on when he sees Yasuke again in 1582 that he is of high favor and he seems to have received a stipend that might even be greater than his own. So he's getting paid.
Interesting.
So
So
within like 2 years of him arriving in Japan, he's already as high level as some of these lords.
And so this is the thing. We don't know because like there is mention in some records that we can't really confirm that some might have called him a tono, which would translate roughly to lord. But like if he was a samurai or not, we're not sure because they didn't actually use the word samurai in that time period.
that's fair. And I mean, even just like Nobunaga giving him a sword, isn't that like a pretty like great thing to give to someone at the time? I feel like it's not
Yeah,
something you would give to just a slave. It would be something you would give to someone that you care about and respect.
yeah, exactly. And we do see records talking about Yasuke being a weapon bearer for Oda Nobunaga. So he isn't a slave. He might be a retainer slash bodyguard. And this is where kind of like it becomes hard. Um, is also this is a painting from the time period where we do see a black man wrestling a Japanese person. So
Interesting.
people believe this is possibly Yasuke.
Hmm.
Um, but just going back to this, we they use terms like bushi to refer to warriors. And so if we're talking a samurai in the sense of a armed individual in the service of a lord, Yasuke probably meets that requirement.
Yeah.
But if we're talking in terms of like the samurai caste system, which comes in later, where it's landed nobility, a landed warrior class who serve in the governance of a nation, he was not.
When does the word samurai come into more play? You mentioned that it wasn't a caste yet. Do you know when that was?
We will get to that later. Essentially, it starts in the Edo period, so it's like about 3 or 4 leaders after this, um, as Japan enters the Edo period, which is considered a period of prosperity, which goes up until like the Imperial Japan, which we know from World War II. Um, at some point during the Edo period, one of the rulers sets up a caste system and creates the samurai caste.
So, in my opinion, then, if the samurai caste isn't around yet and he's doing everything that a samurai does do, that's enough for me to be like, yeah, he was a samurai.
Especially because it sounds like the only criteria that he doesn't meet in regards to the feudal definition of a samurai is being involved in the government. Because he owns land, he is a warrior, and he is at least lord adjacent.
And paid.
So yeah, and paid. So it sounds like he just needed a government job, and then everyone would be like, "Yep, he's a samurai."
Yeah, it's kind of like gonna use references to medieval Europe here. There's knights, which are landed nobility, and then there's like men at arms, militias, and such, which would serve as like the guards of the town and everything. And they would be armed individuals. They might be in the lord's retinue. They might be a retainer, and they might be in his service. Even though they're not a knight, yeah, they essentially meet all the other qualifications. Now, when we go into samurai, like there is things about combat and other things that like you expect to participate. Like one of the big things is in much of Japanese history, how warfare happened is you would show up on the battlefield and you would point out a guy on the other side and you would 1v1 and you just have a series of 1v1s and you would take the
Like
other
Ghost of
person's head.
Tsushima?
Yeah, like Ghost of Tsushima. And then, which awesome game, you would take their heads as a trophy, and then you would have someone beautify the head with makeup, paint the teeth, make it look nice, and then you would present it for a reward to show your valor in battle. People did start scamming this and just killing peasants and then pretending they were nobles so they could get paid and look cool. But there is things like that where we don't really know the one because we don't have any record of Yasuke participating in any sort of battles or anything. We just know he accompanied Nobunaga around, whether that was as
Did
a
Nobunaga
bodyguard.
was Nobunaga in any big battles like that we know of?
Yeah, so Nobunaga is the first of three great unifiers of Japan. So he, as a daimyo, went and fought a bunch of other clans and daimyos to
Makes sense,
unify
okay.
the southern half of Japan. And so Yasuke shows up in what is essentially the last year of Oda Nobunaga's life.
Got it.
So at this point, most of Oda Nobunaga's fighting has been done. He's not really at war
You said,
anymore.
yeah, last year of his life. Do you mean because he dies of old age or in battle
So
or
we'll get
sickness?
into this is the
Is
one
is
instance we know of where Yasuke fights, which is
is it
the
the Honno-Ji Incident
Honno-Ji.
that I see?
Yes, which is Oda Nobunaga is betrayed by Akechi Mitsude and assassinated.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And we know at this time some of Oda Nobunaga's retainers, like Mori Ranmaru, who there is no historical record of this, but many people like to believe they were in a gay relationship,
Oh, how
um,
nice.
um, die, along with Oda Nobutada, his heir. Yasuke is present at this time, and they're at essentially a temple, a shrine. They are attacked by the forces of Akechi Mitsude. Oda Nobunaga is fighting. He runs out of arrows. He runs out of shot. He grabs his spear. He's fighting. It's believed Yasuke was there. Like we know he was there. Oda Nobunaga is forced to retreat further and further into the temple. Eventually, they barricade into a location. They cannot escape, and he commits seppuku. And then his body is burned, and they never recover his body. Um, Yasuke flees to another part of the city where Oda Nobutada is, where he's also under siege. He is there. Oda Nobutada also ends up having to commit seppuku under siege because they can't escape.
And
So
And
Yasuke lived through both of
Yasuke's
those, or
so this is what happens. Akechi Mitsude captures Yasuke, but he describes him in some B-style terms. He doesn't consider him Japanese or a samurai, so does not force him to commit seppuku. And he is returned into the care of the Jesuits, who thank the Lord that he was brought home safely and that he did not die. And they are very happy to see him again because they do seem to have cared about him.
so does he leave Japan after this?
This is where his story ends. We know he was returned to the Jesuits. No record of him exists after that. He
Wow,
but
probably
he's
left
that's
the
there.
interesting.
only
So he might have had like a peaceful rest of his life then, right?
Yeah.
Or been a slave, I guess. I'm not sure if he got
Well,
returned to the
he either
Jesuits.
lived out the rest of his days happy and free or in slavery.
and
Yeah,
Hard to say.
unfortunately. Oops.
and here's the thing. It does seem that he was held in some high regard by the Jesuits, and he wasn't treated like a normal slave. He was a bodyguard. So it
Okay.
seems like it wasn't like he was out of the fields being abused. He was accompanying them to important meetings and other things. So
At the very least, he had a better life than other slaves and
yeah,
black people during his time.
and this is where it's kind of weird because we see like in the time period, Akechi Mitsuhide does not consider him to be a samurai or Japanese because he does not make him commit seppuku, which is what a samurai would do in that time period. And so it's kind of these conflicting things where like, okay, he was a warrior, he was a bodyguard, but was he truly samurai?
I
Don't
guess that
know.
is a interesting distinction that he wasn't Japanese, which seems like the main reason that, Akechi didn't consider or one of the main reasons why he didn't consider Yasuke as a samurai. Um, do is in the feudal system, is that a stipulation that you have to be Japanese to be a samurai, or is it just the
Yeah, what about
being a
Tom
lord?
Cruise?
Yeah. Is
Uh,
Tom Cruise a
Tom
samurai?
so
Tom Cruise wasn't a samurai or Japanese in The Last Samurai.
so
Yeah.
this is what we get into. William Adams is another confirmed foreigner who became a samurai.
Okay, he's Tom Cruise basically.
Yeah, he's Tom Cruise. He's an Englishman who becomes a samurai, I believe. Um, so this like here is from Tokugawa Ieyasu, who is like one of the Tokugawa shogunate that establishes the caste system. The samurai was a social class comprising on average 10% of the population. Officially, the only way to be a samurai was to be born into a family of that class. So
But
you had to be a Musha, Bushi, or Monofu, and then your children could be part of that class. But there were exceptions, like William Adams. So exemptions could happen. We just don't know if that
So,
happened for Yasuke.
for video game aspect, do you remember when Ghost of Tsushima takes place? Because wasn't it before this? Because they didn't have guns yet, but there were samurai.
Yeah, it was many years before this. It was during the Mongol invasions of Japan. So that would have been like 1400s, I want to say.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the samurai. I mean, at least, of course, it's a video game. They could be totally wrong, but the
Yeah.
samurai is a pretty hefty social class in that first game.
Yeah. And what you could argue here is that it already existed as a social class, essentially, but it was codified into law by Tokugawa
Okay,
Ieyasu.
sure.
so is there a reason that William Adams, like, no one argues the fact that he's a samurai as opposed to Yasuke? Is it like
It's
a
probably
class thing?
racism.
Was he born into rich? Is it because he's white?
No, it's because from my understanding, we actually have like written documents of like the shogun saying William Adams has been
Of
made a samurai.
okay,
Okay, like an
So
official knighting ceremony almost.
yeah,
But
yeah, like there's official documentation of him being made a samurai. Whereas for
but we don't have any
Yasuke,
kind of documentation like that for Yasuke.
yeah, Yasuke, the closest we have is some document referencing that he might have been made a tono and that he's a type of lord. Maybe he's a weapon bearer. He was given a residence and a stipend. Like here's the evidence. He was given a sword, which is great. He was given a house. He was given a paycheck. He served as a bodyguard. He was a weapon bearer, and he was there at the final moments of Oda Nobunaga.
so,
But yeah,
oh, go ahead, go ahead. I'll ask my question
yeah,
after.
yeah. But there is no official document record anywhere that says Oda Nobunaga made him a samurai
Yeah,
or made
that's
him
fair.
a any sort of anything. We just know he was given stuff.
Well, it sounds to me like it's one of those things in history, where it's probably just genuinely some racism to it, where
Yeah.
he probably was a samurai, but like they kind of wanted to keep it out of the history books, kind of thing, to be like, we don't really, you're a
Oh,
samurai, but not really. We can't really say
Especially
that.
because it sounds like Ogo Nobunaga, I know I said that wrong, was one of, if not the only person who, like, really liked Yasuke and wanted him around. It sounds like not a lot of people I mean, it sounds obviously people were, like, impressed by him, but it sounds like not a lot of people were like, "You're cool, I don't want you to be a slave anymore."
yeah. And then there's a whole thing where so um Oda Nobunaga was known for having an obsession with like foreign stuff. And so there is a chance that he just kept Yasuke around. He's like, "Hey, here's this cool foreigner that you've never seen. Like you've never seen a black guy
Sure.
before."
Mm-hmm.
Um And we know later on Japan enters a period of ice like they've always been kind of isolationist and they kind of go further into isolationism, which then gets broken by the Great White Fleet that America sends over at some point. There's one of white painted boats to break the forced isolationism. And so it could just be that the Japanese and the records just never noted him being a samurai because it could have been they think only Japanese people can be samurai, or just due to their desire for isolationism, they don't want to admit that there's been more than one foreigner that ever became one.
Hmm.
But the
Yeah,
genuine
and
answer
that
is
makes sense to me.
we don't know. The genuine answer is we just don't know if he ever was or not. But we know he was a warrior, and so you could consider like I feel like you
So
could
what about
consider
that
him.
photo in the bottom left? Is that's a modern day photo, right? Or is that because that looks like
That's a drawing. It's just a rendition of what Yasuke could have looked like as a
that's
samurai.
what he looks like in Assassin's Creed Shadows. So that's what I was wondering because I was like, is that a more modern day photo? Because that's exactly kind of what he wears and stuff. Or is that an actual historical image? Do you know?
From my understanding, it's just a artistic rendition. It's just a drawing someone has done.
They probably took the
but more
inspiration from
modern.
it though.
Yeah. Well, for example, Assassin's Creed Shadows actually does a really good job with a lot of the armor that the people are wearing. So what I imagine is that someone wanted to depict Yasuke here, and so they looked at the armor from the time period and drew what they imagined he would look like in that armor.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then my second question is, what is these pants these people are wearing on the right? Do you have any
Uh,
clue on what's going on there?
this is I believe it's a woodblock print by a Japanese artist in the time period, depicting the Jesuits and their slaves.
Oh,
So I
And
guess the
they just
Jesuits
wore
wore puffy
massive
pants.
pants.
yeah.
Yeah.
I found in my studies of history, people either like their pants really tight or really puffy. Seems to be the two ways people go. I would
I
prefer
actually don't
puffier
mind
pants.
puffy pants, but I would kind of
Yeah.
prefer the pants on the left there that the samurai I think are wearing in that top left image versus the ones on the right.
Where it's
Yeah,
kind of puffy, and then you
Yeah.
tuck them into your
I
boots,
think
your
that I
wraps, or
think
whatever.
I think that's kind of a fun style.
Yeah.
But
you
the
don't
full
want to
puff one isn't.
accentuate. You don't want your hips to look real big.
I mean, unless it had like a real practical purpose, it looks pretty goofy. But
Just
Yeah,
really silly.
fashion is always.
yeah. But what I will say representations in media of Yasuke. We actually have a lot. Um, there's a Japanese children's book. There's a live action TV show with him. There's a game about the conquest of Oda Nobunaga that came out like 1993 that had Yasuke as like a hero you could get in it. Netflix made an anime about Yasuke, which I did watch, and I was very disappointed because it doesn't really cover his life. Uh, it's more like Yasuke fighting a bunch of crazy robots and demon robots.
Okay, sure. Yeah. But that might have
Yeah.
happened, you know? Maybe that
Yeah.
was one of the letters they missed. They've missed a couple letters where demon robots came to Japan and Yasuke fought them all
It
off.
was there was actually the fight that Yasuke got samurai knighted afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Um, in the Souls-like game Neo 2, he is a boss you fight. You notably do not kill him. He becomes your friend after, and he has a spectral bear that serves as his like aid during the boss fight.
That's
That's
cool.
cool.
Notably, Yasuke is also a main character in Assassin's Creed Shadows. There's Guilty Gear. There's this character with the white Oni mask that is inspired by Yasuke, and there is like Samurai Warriors 5, which is another fighting game where you can play as Yasuke and he uses brass knuckles.
Okay, so he's like really
Um,
popular.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, whether he was a samurai or not, he was real, but now he has become more of this like legend on top of that, sounds like.
yeah. So he's become a legend. We like the definitive answer on whether or not he's a samurai is just we don't know, but it wouldn't be surprising if he was.
Sure.
We just don't know for certain about it.
We don't have any direct proof that validates that he was.
Yeah. It's like when you look at the circumstantial evidence, it indicates that he was someone of some status. He did receive a weapon. He did seem to have the favor of Oda Nobunaga, but there's no document ever showing like a knighting ceremony like we have with William Adams. There's no document saying, "Hey, the shogun, the daimyo, someone made him a samurai."
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's a samurai.
He's a
I know that that's
samurai
not
to
my place to
me.
say. Yeah, I have absolutely no say. I am nowhere near Japanese in ethnicity and origin, so not my culture. But if it was, I would say that he's a samurai.
And I would argue that most of the stuff I'm showing here, like the various games and things, are made in Japan. Like they made a children's book about him. Whether or not they say he's a samurai, like in this image from the children's book here. you see he's carrying a katana. He like in here he's depicted as a noble person. You have this Neo game. He's given full samurai armor. Whether or not he was a samurai, I honestly don't think matters because the people like him. They hold him in high regard. They respect him for who he was.
He's still made a significant impact, not only in regards to like history, but just culture and how we perceive samurais and other, Japanese warriors.
And
Yeah,
and for such a short amount of time, because it sounds like he was only there for a couple of years, right? Before he kind of, but he went through a lot, between the different
yeah.
sieges. He went from one siege to another siege and lived through both. Um, so
And then
either
was the only
way,
survivor of an assassin attack.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah. There are some people that believe that since like taking the severed heads was like something that people would do. There are some people that tell stories that he took the heads of Oda Nobunaga and Oda Nobutada back to their clan to keep them safe, so they wouldn't be taken by their enemies and other things. Because when you commit seppuku, you stab yourself in the gut, and your second chops your head off. So some people believe that he did like return the heads to the clan, and there's other like little folk tales about him that are around there. But
that's cool.
yeah, and we know
It
he
makes me want
accompanied
to go
Oda.
back and beat Assassin's Creed Shadows. I only got about halfway through it, but um, it wasn't my favorite game just because of some of the open worldness was like too open world in the sense that like it took forever to get to the next quest. And some other things that just was boring. But the story of him sounds cool, so I maybe want to go back and see where they go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious if they depict the Honno-Ji Incident. I wonder if they'll like have you fight in the final moments of Oda Nobunaga.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'd be
and then
cool.
like even the reason he got betrayed, we don't really know. Like, there's a bunch of theories about why Akechi betrayed Oda Nobunaga, but we don't have any definitive like reason. He never wrote a statement about why he did it.
Hmm.
Yeah, but following Oda Nobunaga's death, there's two more unifiers that end up creating the Tokugawa shogunate and then create the Edo period of Japan.
Well, going
But we have
forward, there has never been another black samurai. Like, I mean, obviously we don't know if he was a samurai, but besides Yasuke, there was never in history another black or a samurai, or was there possibly one?
So from what I can gather, like there were other black people in Japan and everything, but essentially with Tokugawa Ieyasu codifying the samurai caste system, so as a social class, with the only official way to join being born into a family of that class, it seems like just the only other foreigner we can 100% confirm ever became a samurai was William Adams. Other than that, it seems like it was strictly Japanese people that could be samurai.
kind of locked that down very quickly. Do you think that they
Yeah.
locked that down because of people like Yasuke being perceived as samurais and these high-ranking officials, and they're like, "Hey, we don't want these foreigners, cosplaying as our great warriors."
Um, from what I can tell, the reason was more they were trying to limit the power of the warrior class of people, because in the Sengoku Jidai, the Emperor of Japan essentially lost all power, and all the power was really in the shogun, who was the military leader. And even then, the shogun was constantly getting uh, overthrown by daimyos that were rising up in rebellion that were becoming stronger than him. So it
Yeah,
seemed like what they wanted to do is limit the amount of people that could be a part of that class, limit the amount of weapons in the country, and um, force them into more administrative roles so that they would be out there fighting less. They were trying to keep the country from having constant civil war.
yeah,
So it wasn't out of some sort of like, oh, this is
I mean,
like,
yeah, that makes sense because every single, samurai game I played, whether it's like Ghost of Yotai and all that kind of things, it always has this kind of thing where it's just these different samurai families that are just killing each other.
fighting each other.
Um,
Yeah,
because they want to be in power, which is obviously all of history. That's all of history, but I can totally understand why they would
yeah,
do this to hopefully like calm
yeah.
down the
And because
clans.
there's because like in the Sengoku Jidai, there's plenty of stories of commoners going out, fighting battles, killing enough people, earning renown, and becoming samurai. And so I think they were just like, we can't give everyone this whole thing where everyone has weapons and is constantly fighting. We need to put a little kibosh on this, stomp it out, limit the amount of people so we aren't constantly killing each other.
yeah.
Um, yeah, because
And
like I
now, at
mean,
the end of
Japan
the
usually
day, samurai translates to warrior, right? Am I correct in that, or should I Google that really quick?
Double check, but for my research, it was saying like samurai was like a Western invention for the most part, and it just means warrior. Like musha, bushi, and stuff just mean warrior. It's kind of like how katana we call like katana is this type of sword. No, katana is just Japanese for sword.
Okay, so samurai, suppose this is an AI overview, so, and this is what the Wikipedia says. Samurai translates to one who serves, um, or, and it means one who serves, and then in parentheses that they're a lord.
Yeah,
So it's not even just a warrior sometimes, but at least is what I'm doing with a quick Google search. Um,
yeah.
it means one who serves, and that's exactly what Yasuke was. Technically, he did everything he did, warrior wise and serving Nobunaga. So.
Yeah. So I don't think it's wrong to consider him a samurai. It's just we don't have anything saying he was, but he was a warrior and he did serve as a bodyguard. Um, the other thing is like there's plenty of like Japanese society was very more fluid. Like for example, in the samurai clans, if the leader of the clan was away at war, his wife would be in charge of defending the castle during a siege, wielding bow and arrow and naginata and like pole arm and stuff to defend the castle. That would be their responsibility. So they had a much more fluid of like who could and couldn't be warriors and such. And also traditional weapon of the samurai was a bow. Like they were horse archers originally. Um, so we just don't like. I'm fine saying he's a samurai. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
Do we know if he was or not? Not really, but he was given a sword.
Is
He's the
is there
bodyguard.
is there any reason why calling him a samurai would be like
Blasphemous.
insensitive, yeah, or like disrespectful to that tradition and that custom?
I don't really know. I think it's more just like if you look at the historical time period, they didn't use the term samurai, and we don't have anything confirming whether he was like a musha or a bushi or anything. And I think there's also just a little bit of like, hey, like the if we're talking traditionally, according to Tokugawa Ieyasu, the only way to be a samurai is to be born into the samurai class. So I think there is just a bit of like a hey, we're not sure, so we don't want to say so because like he wasn't born into the samurai class, and we just don't know.
Yeah.
I do
Did
know
you look
that.
up, and as part of your research, it's okay if you didn't, did you look up any like museums in Japan? I would love to know what they are saying, directly in a museum of Japan, what they kind of think.
So, I do remember actually looking this up when Assassin's Creed Shadow got announced, and they were showing the trailer and everything, and there was, like, some outrage in Japan because mainly because they just wanted just a purely Japanese protagonist for the Assassin's Creed game in Japan, but there was a lot of, like, "Hey, we don't know if he was a samurai. We don't want him depicted as one because we just like there's nothing saying he actually was. Like he
Yeah.
didn't, as far as we're aware, he didn't do any of the actions. Like him not committing seppuku is like a big thing of like, okay, you weren't a samurai. If you were, you would have committed seppuku and other things. That it seemed like they didn't love it. But most of their outrage more seemed to be about like Ubisoft messing up some like promotional material where they were depicting shrines broken, which they found is very disrespectful.
Oh, yeah.
But it sounds like most, generally speaking, Japanese scholars and historians kind of err on the side of him being not a samurai.
Well, so this is the one thing, and this is I'll go back to the top here. The only reason, as far as I could tell, that people really call him a samurai, the most influential person in regards to people calling him a samurai, is Thomas Lockley, a Westerner who wrote a book
Mhm.
that embellishes things that calls him a samurai. He's the one who's the most influential into why people call him a samurai. The actual Japanese sources, from what I can tell, no one really calls him a samurai. From what I can tell, if I'm wrong, please correct me. I just didn't see anywhere where like a Japanese source was saying he's a samurai. The only one I really saw was Westerners, so foreigners.
That is interesting. I mean, I can understand why they would want to keep that kind of a bit more close to, their own home and their own people. But like I said, I can't think of a good reason why not to call him a samurai.
Yeah, I just looked up Thomas Lockley, and he's a British, academic. So he obviously did his research and stuff. But the cover of his book says samurai, and so
Yeah,
that obviously pushes the. It says Yasuke and then samurai on it. So it obviously kind of
yeah.
pushes that idea that he wants the. And it's great. I'm fine with it if he is. or
Yeah.
Yeah.
was or wasn't even. You know, the idea of him doing what a samurai does is kind of good enough for me. So
Yeah. And the other thing is like the reason I would be hesitant to call him a samurai is just because when looking more into like Japanese history, for example, eventually other groups like the Franciscan monks and other missionary groups in the Catholic Church finally get the Pope to let them into Japan to preach. And because they don't understand Japanese society and culture and things, they kind of mess everything up and get Christianity outlawed in Japan. And then they start killing all the Christians. So I feel like I would just err on the side of the Japanese sources that seem to hold him in some high regard, but don't definitively say whether or not he's like a samurai. I think I agree with
mhm.
you, Chad. It's fine if he did everything a samurai would do for the most part, except for commit seppuku. But he was a bodyguard. He was someone who Oda Nobunaga held in favor. So I think he's someone you can respect. I think is really cool. And if you want to say he's a samurai, awesome.
So
Yeah.
with him not committing seppuku, I don't know a lot about seppuku. I know that it's, you know, a way of kind of maintaining your honor through death. Is it something that you have to willingly choose to do? Is it something that like your opponent approaches you and says, "Hey, I've defeated you. You should seppuku."
So you can be ordered to commit seppuku by your lord, in which case you're
Okay.
supposed to do it. It is a way of regaining honor. So, like for example, if you've dishonored your lord, instead of like him confiscating all the lands and holdings and leaving your family destitute, he might just order you and your eldest son to kill yourselves.
So
Um,
Brutal.
so
um,
unless Yasuke was ordered to commit seppuku, there's no real reason for him to do it, right?
yeah, but also when losing a battle, like with Oda Nobunaga, he was losing this siege, and he considered it to be dishonorable to be taken alive by his enemies, so he killed himself to prevent them from taking him alive.
While that's true, I mean, if Nobunaga commits seppuku, is Yasuke just supposed to commit it right after or without? I mean, if Nobunaga wasn't like, I'm gonna kill myself and then you also kill yourself, I don't think it would make sense for him to kill himself. If I mean, obviously we don't know, we
Well,
weren't there,
yeah,
but
Especially because it sounds like Yasuke was leaving with other people when they were captured.
yeah,
It like he didn't just run off on his own to try and
yeah.
escape. He was like fighting with people to leave.
Yeah, so the only reason I can think is he does end up when like Oda Nobutada ends up committing seppuku, he's captured by the enemy, and normally a samurai at that time would probably be ordered to commit seppuku by his captors, or he would do it or request it out of a sense of not losing his honor. Neither one happens, and it seems that Akechi specifically did not. He described Yasuke in what the sources said bestial terms, and um, did not make him commit seppuku. So it seems like not everyone in Japan accepted him and did not consider him someone who needed to commit seppuku. Like they didn't consider him a samurai or
So
someone who would lose honor because he wasn't anybody to them, other than like a fun accessory of Oda Nobunaga's.
yeah,
yeah, and
but
it's
but
also possible that Akechi wanted to dishonor him even
mhm.
further and say you're not allowed to commit seppuku kind of thing.
Yeah, like there's just a bunch of ambiguity here where we don't really know. At the same time, Yasuke, by the time his story ends, he was probably 28. He spent only a year or two in the service of Oda Nobunaga, so he may not have even felt himself like he was a samurai. He was a bodyguard that served Nobunaga as a basically Oda Nobunaga saw him, took him for the Jesuits because it was cool, and the Jesuits were like, "Cool, we still want favor with this guy because he's the dude giving us all the land, the church, and like the support to allow us to continue our mission. So we're not gonna mess with this." And then they're very happy when Yasuke comes back, and he seems to return to life as normal as far as we're aware.
it is
So
it is kind of interesting that racism saved Yasuke's life. Because if he was Japanese or possibly even just not black, he would have been expected to commit seppuku. Um, and I don't know. It's interesting to me that he's like, "You're not Japanese. I view you as lesser than me, and therefore you shouldn't kill yourself."
And Yasuke's like, all right, that sounds
Yeah,
good to
I
me.
don't
I'm gonna
blame.
head out
yeah,
then. I'll talk to you guys
Yeah,
later. I'm going back to not here.
yeah. Like, so, but it seems like from all the like the representations in media I've found, people seem to hold him in high regard and respect him. Like, there isn't any sort of like, at least in the modern times, whether it's from Japan or other places, people like him. And it seems whether or not they say he's a samurai, they think he was someone of note, someone of some importance, and they leave it there. So
it's
I
very
think
cool.
it's almost similar to like Chad, you played Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
like it's like Henry. You get all this armor. You're basically a knight, but because you're a bastard son of the Lord, you don't actually get to be a knight until much later. They have to like
Yeah.
go through a special process. I feel like it's almost that like he's a samurai in all but name, just
Yeah, and we're
because
watching Night
they're
of the Seven Kingdoms right now. Oof, such a good show. And this kind of
great
thing
show.
comes up with him being a hedge knight, and they keep being like, "Well, is it your blood? Was Sir Arlen of your blood?" So obviously, this was just, you know, he probably
It,
and the main character is technically not really a knight, but he kind of is. And Henry in Kingdom Come is a knight, but not of the blood, and so they just don't
yeah,
allow it.
and so yeah, it could just be he wasn't born Japanese, so they didn't want to make him a samurai, but he was a warrior of high regard, and
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. Chad, in Assassin's Creed Shadows, do they say he's a samurai?
I thought they did. Now, I have played this about a year ago and I didn't beat it. I got pretty far into it though, but I'm pretty sure they do.
Well, it sounded like there were many Japanese historical societies that wanted him to not be portrayed as a samurai. So I wouldn't be surprised if they had to like cut that out in the final stages of the game. They had to like
Yeah.
cut out specific
Like,
dialogue referring to him as a samurai.
and like I don't know if it was Japanese historical societies or just people talking,
And people
because
in general, yeah.
I didn't look into it too much because I was just focused on reading the sources from the time period and forming as much of my own opinion as I could on this without trying to get too much into the weeds of what the scholars are debating. I
Yeah,
just wanted to see what do the actual things say.
that's fair.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Because
sure Assassin's Creed Shadows said he was a samurai. Um, Now I'm
yeah,
just doing some extra research, and yeah, the official records show that he was always, as you've already said, his weapons bearer.
yeah.
But he was present at his death, and in those battles and stuff like that. So
Yeah. So like we don't know, like, for example, like we know he accompanied Oda Nobunaga for a year during battles that happened. He could have just been, there watching as Nobunaga directed the troops and just handing him whatever he needed. He could have been actually fighting in the final moments in the Honno-Ji Incident. He could have been fighting to save Oda Nobunaga's life, which is what most of the depictions seem to show, is him trying to defend and save Oda Nobunaga until Nobunaga decides like, hey, there's no escaping here. I'm not letting them take me alive.
wow.
Yeah.
What do you
So
guys think? Do you think? I mean, what do you feel? Do you think he's a samurai? Do you think he's not? Let us know.
Why do you feel that way? Do you think that him, meeting most of the criteria is enough? Do you think that the few, little tidbits and semantics that he didn't quite reach, is that enough to just completely cancel it out and say that he's nowhere near a samurai? What do you think and why?
any other historical sources on this, please let me know. Um, one of the funniest ones is I found a guy who went through, apparently when Assassin's Creed Shadow came out, there was people fighting on the Wikipedia article about him trying to change information all the time. And there's a dude who documents all the changes as well as he goes through Thomas Lockley's book and points out a bunch of translation errors. So if you got anything else, let me know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't want to spread false information either. We want to know what is right and what was true, and then obviously maybe there's not an answer, and that's okay too. We don't, because I think Thomas Lockley, while he's an academic, might have spread some misinformation that leads people to think he is a samurai, or maybe he was. We don't know. So we would love to learn more
Or
and talk about
maybe
it.
not even spread misinformation, but just made assumptions that didn't quite have the grounding to make.
Mhm.
Yeah. As always, though, thank you for joining us. I hope you
Yeah.
learned something new. And if you got anything else you'd love to share with us, just put it in the comments.
See you
See
next
See you
you.
week.
next time.